Well, what a crazy evening of football, Stuart. Poland scraped through despite a poor performance against Argentina.
Yeah, though, Szczesny to thank for that, and what a crazy evening it was of football.
And it looks like beating the world champions France wasn't enough to take Tunisia through. That's got to be harsh on them.
No, you've got to feel for the Tunisians. Really great for the Aussies, though, to go through, but Denmark fell well short of our expectations.
Good morning and welcome to World Cup Sera Qatar, a podcast produced and presented by sports journalism students live from our studios here in Preston. I'm Matt Salmons.
And I'm Stuart McCracken.
We've got the Christmas tree up. It's the 1st of December, and in today's episode we're delighted to be joined by our panel of guests.
I'm Matt Ward.
I'm Jeremiah Takungelo.
And I'm Callum Insel.
We'll hear from our guests in a few minutes, but first we welcome TV's Richard Ascombe, sports reporter at BBC Northwest Tonight, who's also one of our journalism graduates back a few years ago. Richard, before we start, I'm not sure what memories you've got of your time here at UCLan, but we thought we'd look back at the archives. We found a photo of you. You can't see it right now, but I think you can see it on screen. That must bring back some memories of UCLan for you.
That's not me. That's my son. Obviously, it's very good of you to find a picture of my son. I also want to say that's not a Christmas tree, that's a bonsai. You need to improve on that. But no, I had some great times at UCLan. It set me up for whatever nonsense I've done since. It was a great course, had a great time. I'm not so sure my tutors did, but I did. And that picture brings back memories, but I guess they're tainted with, where's it gone? A bit like the Christmas tree.
Talking about memories, what's your first memory of World Cups? Can you remember?
My first memory, because I'm so old, is Argentina 1978, which was it felt really magical. I think when you're a kid, World Cups are magical, aren't they? And they retain that feeling for those of us that love football. But I remember 1978, Argentina were the host nation. Felt like there was ticker tape everywhere. It just looked so much more glamorous than the previous World Cups. And Argentina went on to win it, of course. So that's my earliest memory, yeah.
And just taking you back a bit, Richard, we did a bit of research on you and we found out that you were born in Zambia. Can you kind of tell us that story and how you came over to the UK?
Yeah, well, my mum and dad, if you were being polite, you could say they were eccentrics. If you weren't, you could say they were complete nutters. So they were both at university. That's where they met. They were both teachers, and they decided they wanted to go on an adventure. There were various options that they were looking at, which in the sort of early to mid 60s would have been very unusual. They were looking at going to live in Canada, and then they decided they were going to go and teach in Zambia in a pretty out of the way place. Not many people would, even in Zambia would have heard of it, but it was in the middle of nowhere, and they decided to go on a teaching adventure. And at some point, I emerged.
So what would your role involve at the minute during World Cups?
What's my role for Northwest Tonight?
Yeah.
During World Cups? I mean, I do sometimes work for the national BBC Sport and whatever, so that's obvious. That's just that role is clear. It just depends on how the World Cup goes. I guess for Northwest Tonight, it is the excitement of the Northwest. The Northwest starts to go crazy for England. So I've been in 2 fan parks recently. For the opening game, I was in the fan park at the Winter Gardens in Blackpool with supporters there, and then I was at one the other night for the America game outside Bolton Stadium. So we tend to reflect the excitement in the region, but also against Wales, both of the goal scorers, all the goals were scored by Northwest players, genuine Northwest players, if that makes sense as well. Not players that just play for our clubs, but players from the Northwest in Marcus Rashford and Phil Foden. So we obviously did something on that. We could have done more, I think, on Marcus Rashford if we'd chosen to do so. We could have gone back to his old school. We could have spoken to his old football coach from his times at a junior football club. He was on the Today programme and Five Live and so on. But we just did a little piece reflecting the sort of pride and the achievements of Marcus and Phil.
Nice, and you've brought it up there. You brought up England. Have you been watching the England games? What have you made of England so far at the tournament?
Do you know what? I should know better because I'm so old and I've seen England fail so many times. But I am feeling very positive. I know that we're going to meet France, assuming that England get past Senegal and the French get to the quarters, and that's going to be a completely different story. Despite them losing to Tunisia, they're probably the strongest team along with Brazil, aren't they, in the tournament? But I think England is shaping up well. I think Gareth Southgate has solved some problems. You know, he went to the back four that has allowed us to attack more. He's introduced Kyle Walker. I'm pretty sure, I don't know what you think, that he's thinking about a back three if we face France. But he's also brought in players like Calvin Phillips in case Declan Rice gets injured. Callum Wilson has had minutes, so if Harry Kane is either injured or not doing the business, he's got him. So I think he's created a core. You know, he brought in Foden and Rashford, and they played well. Wales were poor, but they still played very well. So I think there are a lot of good signs for England. I really do. I don't know what you think.
Well, you sound quite positive about England's chances. Who do you think's the favourite for the tournament still?
I think it's France, in my eyes, because Brazil are obviously going to be, they're going to have a say in everything. Argentina seem to be improving. But I think France, even though they lost to Tunisia, they made so many changes. There seems to be a clear difference between their first 11 and the rest of the squad, perhaps. I think they are favourites. However, I think England can make it very difficult for them. I thought Brazil showed signs, but they've huffed and puffed a bit for me. I don't think they've found their best way of playing this into, rely on Neymar when he's there maybe to do something, rely on certain other players to do something. But as a collective, they're not as strong as I expected them to be. Having said that, they'll no doubt get better.
We'll come back to the World Cup in just a moment. I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about your job. Like I said, we did a bit of research and seeing that you've covered so many global sporting events kind of down the years. What is it like covering such global scale events, and how does that feel? Surely it must make you nervous knowing how many people are kind of watching your coverage.
Do you know what? It doesn't in a way. I guess it did. It did, but I always think that. You sometimes when you learn to broadcast for radio, as you know, you focus on one listener. You have one person in mind, even sometimes, which for me used to be my gram. And I remember thinking I was a lot more worried about upsetting my gram than I was the hundreds of thousands of people who were listening. And in a way, that feeling, I think, is either there, or if it's not, it's good to have it, because you're focusing on doing your job. You're focusing on, that a lot of people listening, your colleagues, for example, know an awful lot about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to portray things and so on. And if I worry about anything, it's more about whether you've hit the right notes, not what people think about it. I think you've got to try and put that to one side from the beginning. As long as you've done your best, as long as you've prepared, I think that gets rid of the nerves, to be honest, and you can just enjoy it. And if you're at an event like, I've been lucky enough to do 3 Olympic Games, lots of Champions League finals, you can be excited rather than nervous. And I think that's something that it definitely happens over time, for sure.
You talked about preparation there. Obviously, last night we had a scenario where Mexico and Poland were equal on everything, bar it was going down to yellow cards, could have went free for Poland. How important is that preparation and research and depth of knowledge for somebody in such high sporting events?
I think it is, particularly if you're doing, if this makes sense, if you're doing a pure sport report. So if you're doing a match report, or if you are working for BBC Sport or ITV Sport or whatever, and you're talking purely about that game, or the football or sporting scenarios, then you really do need to know everything or as much as you can. I think if you are broadcasting for news, the thing to bear in mind all the time, rather than the nuts and bolts of, you need to know, you need to have an idea, obviously, but it's more important to focus on the people, the human stories, and the things that will resonate with viewers or listeners who aren't necessarily mad on the football, but of course we're all interested in people. We're all interested in Marcus Rashford's story. You know, where Marcus Rashford has come from, what he's done with the school meals and so on. Those sort of things, I think, are probably more important if you're coming from a news perspective. If you're broadcasting into Northwest Tonight or breakfast or something.
Yesterday, Richard, we started, one of our fellow co-hosts, Matt Smith, started a little kind of fun little tradition that I think we're going to try and carry on throughout the episodes. He asked everybody in the studio what their favourite World Cup song was. So I'm going to throw that at you. Your favourite World Cup song? It can be an official song, it could be an England song. What was your favourite World Cup song? And feel free to give us a rendition as well.
You'll be lucky. What are these unofficial songs, by the way? Where are they? How do they exist? Anyway, mine, it is a cliche. I mean, a lot of people of my generation go for World in Motion, and I don't believe them. It's cooler. I know that John Barnes was rapping away. It's not as good as Three Lions, is it? It's not. Three Lions every day, all day.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thanks very much for your time, Richard. Great to speak to you. We would carry on speaking to you all day, but we're tight on time. We've got 3 other guests that want to give their opinion on the World Cup, but thanks very much for speaking to us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
So, Group C has been decided. It's Argentina that topped the group after they went over Poland last night. But, Wardy, I think Poland have got Wojciech Szczesny to thank for the fact that they're in the next round.
Yeah, they do. I think they should probably thank him with a bottle of wine or some box of chocolates. To be honest, they were really, really poor, and I think Szczesny probably essentially got him through, which is all great to him. He's a great goalkeeper. Obviously, he was very good with the penalty saves. Probably a little bit unlucky with the penalty. It probably wasn't a penalty, to be honest. Let's be real. But you probably would have thought that Poland maybe would have come out and attacked, tried to get that top spot. It's probably an easier game against Australia, but obviously now they've got to face France. They've got to stick with it. And yeah, I was bewildered as to why they didn't attack and why they didn't go and help and support Lewandowski up front. He was just isolated at times.
Well, Cal, they touched there on the penalty decision. Do you think it was a penalty? They went to the screen, obviously, with VAR, and he decided to change his decision.
No, I don't think it was a penalty. I think it was. I think when you've got a player like Messi going down like that, I think as a referee, you've got to make the right decision that you think. But I feel it would be hard to not give Messi the penalty. But in my eyes, no. I think Poland were unlucky, but justice did prevail, obviously, with Szczesny saving it.
And Jerry, it was Argentina and Poland that went through from this group that also had Mexico and Saudi Arabia in it as well. Did you see it going any differently? Do you think there was a chance that Mexico could have got through, or was it always going to be Argentina and Poland that went through for you?
Obviously, I feel like after the first game, it's really when Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, we were like, oh, so there was a big pressure for the Argentina that they might go out at the second game, and we see that the joy after the game, how released they were to win the game, and I think they were really scared of not making through. I think at the end is the team that we were expected that went through, but we did have a scare that knowing, if Saudi Arabia played the last 2 games better than they did, they could have went through. But at the end, I think the most logical is the order that we were all expected at the end.
Did any of you think any differently, or no surprise for you that it was Argentina and Poland that went through?
I was surprised Mexico. They've not been too bad over the years. I thought they'd have maybe made it through over Poland, but the game against Saudi Arabia for Poland was obviously their tipping point. And obviously they got helped out by that late Saudi Arabia goal.
No, I think the two that you'd all expect to go through went through, and that was Argentina and Poland. I think, Mexico, they've got good players, but Poland they've got that extra bit of quality, and Argentina were probably the best out of the group.
Of course, that's the Mexico curse now over. They've always been knocked out in the last 16 for the last 5 World Cups. Obviously not the way they wanted to be knocked out. And if they did get knocked out in that yellow cards rule that we're talking about, equal and everything bar yellow cards, how cruel would that have been, especially World Cups only every 4 years?
Yeah, that's it. I think it would be cruel, and you know, you'd argue there would be nothing to separate them and Poland, and I think, well, there really wasn't anyway, and you know, Mexico would have saw their win against Saudi Arabia, possibly saw back the Poland-Argentina game and thought they probably deserved to go through, but obviously, you know, such is football and it doesn't always work like that.
I suppose it's sort of a kind of a talking point for how important discipline is now in football. You know, the yellow cards rule, you know, it's so important that, you know, you keep your discipline, you don't go flying in the challenges, and obviously this worked in Poland's favour.
Do you think there's a different way that this could have been decided? I think it was Danny Murphy on commentary yesterday for the BBC was saying that maybe something, you know, a bit more on the pitch to do with maybe attacking. I think he suggested shots on target or something like that should be something that decides who goes through rather than kind of yellow cards. Do you think it could have been decided in, you know, there's a different way that could decide this? I mean, in the end it was goal difference, so we didn't have to worry about the yellow cards rule. But when it does come down to that, I think going out of a World Cup is quite harsh when it's on yellow cards. Do you think that could have been done? Could be done
definitely.
differently?
We remember in the last World Cup when Senegal didn't go through because of the yellow card against Japan, and I think that wasn't really fair because they were looking really good at this World Cup, but unfortunately because of disciplinary action, they're not. And I mean, it doesn't reflect really your level. It doesn't get, as you say, like it should be something more on the pitch, as is your team impact. And when you got yellow cards, sometimes you get yellow cards for only like taking off your top. It doesn't really mean anything. So that's why I mean it might be a little bit harsh to decide like which team go through with yellow cards.
Cool. Group D was also decided yesterday, and we saw some late drama as France beat Tunisia. France were beaten by Tunisia by 1-0. And Stuart, I've got to come to you on this one, because yesterday you said France could play a team of players that they left at home and would still beat Tunisia. Obviously, it was Tunisia who went out and won 1-0. France had a very late equaliser ruled out by VAR. But, you know, how do you feel about that? I mean, you look a bit stupid now.
Yeah, I did. Second time I've looked stupid this week. Yeah, well, I was sitting at the house actually watching the game, and when Griezmann scored, I can't lie, I did celebrate a bit because I thought I can come in with a bit of pride tomorrow, but no, I was ruled out in the end. And fair play to Tunisia, they played with heart in that first half. They were dominant, some would say. But France, they made 11 changes. Didn't expect them to make 11 changes, and they played Camavinga left back, right wing was Guendouzi. Guendouzi played CDM when he's at Arsenal. So some weird decisions by France, but they did bring on their big men late on, but they still couldn't get past the Tunisians. So fair play to Tunisia.
We're also banning you from making predictions now. You are not allowed to come on tomorrow and predict England's game against Senegal because it's probably going to go wrong for us. And you're cursed when it comes to predictions. But Wardy, very harsh on Tunisia. You beat the world champions at a World Cup, yet don't go through.
Yeah, it's kind of almost bittersweet for them. You know, they played phenomenal against France, but it was kind of a win-lose situation. It was almost sort of let's go out with a big send-off, big firework display almost. And obviously, like we said, France did play a weekend squad, but they can sort of leave a tournament with their heads held high, knowing that they've beat one of the best. I think it's probably a bit bittersweet, but a good way to go out.
And Cal, I want to talk a little bit about Denmark, because we all remember that I called them as my dark horses out in the group stage, bottom of their group, a very underwhelming performance from the Danes, wasn't it?
Massively, yeah. I think, based on how they've done in recent years, a lot of people they'd have been a lot of people's dark horses, but I think you can't take anything away from Australia. I've been really impressed with them, and I think I sort of had a sneaky suspicion they would make it through. But no, Denmark, you'd have put them second, if not maybe even top in the group, to have a bit of a surprise. So to see them not go through, it's a shock, but I think it leaves that sort of door open for another dark horse to go the distance.
That's a great chance for Australia now, right, Jerry?
Yeah, of course. Australia, like their first qualification, 2006, and we've seen the scene, we've seen all the emotion they had when they scored, and I think, I don't know, they were saying or told that they wasn't the best Australian group they had, because they used to have players playing Premier League, and now we don't know many in the players in the European face. But yeah, and I don't know how far they can go, but it's sure that when you play with that patience, you are likely to create surprises. So why not? The incident went through, okay, fair enough. But Australia did deserve the qualification at the end.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who's got protection strong at the minute.
I was going to say, switch to rebound.
Yes,
For Denmark.
Yeah, I
Stay-
gotta have my cake and eat it, I think, on that one.
Staying with Denmark, what do you think went wrong for them already in this tournament compared to the last one?
It was probably the Tunisia game for me. You know, if they probably had won that, probably would have got through. But like we said, Australia they had a great tournament. And they were very, very good. Very unlucky against France when they lost 4-1. I thought they played really, really well. And the scoreline sort of maybe didn't reflect how well they played. But yeah, it's just didn't get I can't speak it. Didn't get firing for Denmark. Obviously they were phenomenal in the Euros, but yeah, it's one of them where you can't put your finger on it. It's like if Man City don't turn up in the Premier League and they've got all these quality players. Denmark have got such good players, but I suppose we can all laugh at Kasper Schmeichel now. He obviously said last year in the Euros that he's not coming on, but it is Kasper. It is.
And just finally, did anyone see the fan park celebrations in Australia? 3:30 a.m. in the morning when they made it through. Incredible scenes, weren't they, Cal?
Impressive, and I think that just reflects, how disappointing their World Cups have been in recent years, and it reflects the achievement to make it out the group. So no, pleased for them.
Cool, so we're running a little bit short on time, so we'll leave the catch-up chat there and look ahead to today's games actually in just a moment. Okay, so we've got two more groups to be decided today then, with Costa Rica taking on Germany and Japan facing Spain in Group E, while Canada play Morocco and Croatia face off against Belgium in Group F. But first, a little piece of refereeing history for you all. Germany's game against Costa Rica tonight will see the first ever female refereeing team take charge of a World Cup game. Jerry, that's absolutely massive for female football and women in sport, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially when it's hard sometimes. We know all the prejudice that I can have when it comes to women in sport, but for the referee, so Stéphanie Frappard, that's really a good thing for her. She's been refereeing in Ligue 1 for like 2 or 3 years now. She did Champions League game, obviously coming into the biggest stage in the world in a World Cup. That's really a good thing for her, and even for them, it shows that football is really a sport for everyone, and it can go above the gender. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And you say you've been watching Stéphanie Frappard in League One. How's she been performing?
She had really good starts. Obviously, she was just referencing as normal, but this season she had been quite challenging because many were arguing that she wasn't always whistling the good thing, because I think as well for her it's hard when you're a woman coming in such a man worlds. So I think sometimes she might overplayed her role, but I can understand why. But yeah, she has been some debates this season about how she was and if she really deserved to go to that World Cup.
Yeah, now moving on to the footballs we played today. Let's start with Group E. Germany have to beat Costa Rica and Spain need to beat Japan for Germany to go through. Can you see that happening, Wardy?
No, I don't think. I think Germany have been really, really poor this tournament. They were lucky against Spain the other night. Obviously the striker coming off the bench and getting that goal. I think they were very, very lucky. But yeah, they had to get a result to stand a chance, which obviously they did. But I think Costa Rica will go through ahead of Germany. They've been really, really poor. And I think it's probably a German thing to probably scrape through. And that's a saying. The Germans never give up. But against Japan, they were 1-0 up. They were cruising, and then it was sort of a reverse psychology almost. They sort of gave up, gave the game away.
I mean, what you mentioned there, Cal, that Costa Rica could go through and Germany go through, and it could be one of the most undeserved kind of progressions in World Cup history of Costa Rica being so poor in that first game against Spain. And obviously they won against Japan at the weekend, but they were pretty terrible in that game as well. So probably two teams that don't deserve to go through, but very much could.
Yeah, I think Germany will beat Costa Rica. I think it's a brave prediction to say Costa Rica will beat Germany. I know we saw Japan do it, but I think Japan have got that bit more quality as opposed to Costa Rica. But the standout in that group for me is obviously Spain. and I think providing obviously Japan don't beat Spain, I think we'll be seeing Germany go through with the Spanish.
Cool, so let's move on to Group F. Canada are pretty much out of that one. Belgium need to beat Croatia and hope Canada beat or draw to Morocco to go through. Who do you think is going to get that second place in that group, Jerry?
I really see Morocco and Croatia went through this group, because obviously we were expecting Belgium to be better for this World Cup, but as Kevin De Bruyne mentioned, they look that age, and I mean, like, they hasn't been playing really well, and we know all the dramas going on in the training camp. So for all these reasons, I don't think they have these group Koreans that could make them go through. So I really see Morocco, because Morocco having had an excellent game last World Cup. They were really decent, but were in a tough group. But this World Cup, I really feel like they could go through this time, and I really wish they will.
How will those tensions change the atmosphere in the Belgian camp? When your captain De Bruyne is saying that you're too old to win any tournament, how does that make you feel if you're a player on that team, Cal?
Yeah, it's always going to make you feel like you've been thrown under the bus a little bit, but I think, like we saw, Belgium sort of serial disappointers in a way. Like, they've got an amazing team and they sort of don't show it, and I think that does go down to the age, but I think De Bruyne's quality shows, and I think on the flip side to what I've said, I think players could show him respect to what he said, and they could sort of agree with him. And I think the players in the Belgium camp will know that they've been poor, or at least under par. But no, I think when your captain's saying that, then it's obviously a bit of food for thought.
Yeah, it's obviously, like I said, it's obviously a bit of a worry when your captain's coming out and slaying you. And Belgium, like they said, Belgium have been poor. And they've probably, under probably. For the last couple of tournaments, they've probably, got to that stage and then they've disappointed. So, yeah, I think Morocco will win. They'll go through, and I think fully deserved, 'cause I don't think Belgium deserve anything.
So two groups that are pretty wide open. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch those this afternoon and see how they play out. Jerry, we've got you here. While we've got you here, we're going to have a little look ahead to Friday. You're obviously Swiss. They're playing against Serbia on Friday. What have you made of Switzerland so far at the World Cup, and how far do you think they're going to go?
I think how Switzerland's playing right now is what we were expecting them. So beating Cameroon, losing against Brazil, and now facing the Serbian team. We know the background, the political background. So I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game because we know that Switzerland is really a hard team to beat. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that game, obviously. And everything's still open in that game for everyone. So it'll be a good game to watch. Good fun group.
We'll finish on a closing tradition. We're going to start now. Your favourite World Cup song. We'll start with you, Wardy. What's yours?
I think obviously I know Richard didn't agree with it, but it's got some World in Motion for me. From John Barnes rapping, legendary.
And Jerry, you got some funky trousers on there. What song are you going for?
As a French native certificate, I have to go for Ramener la coupe à la maison, that you all know. So this one is really fun to always hear.
Ben mentioned it yesterday that it's his favourite World Cup song, and I said, as a Scotland fan, that's probably the French, probably the only thing he can celebrate. But Ben can't speak French. You can. Can you give us a little rendition of it?
Ramener la coupe à la maison. Allez les bleus, allez. Ouais, here we go.
Fantastic. And Cal, I don't think there's much topping that, but we'll ask you your favourite World Cup song, and feel free to give us your rendition as well. But you're not topping that. There's no way.
No, there's no way I could top that. No, good from Jerry there. But I think for me, Waka Waka. But I do like the one at the moment. Light Up the Sky. This year's is quite interesting. Like we talked off air, and Stuart said, it gets better every time you hear it. So it is a good one, but no, yeah, Waka Waka for me is quite. It's one of those ones you sort of wake up in the morning, put it on, and gets you ready for the day.
It's an absolute classic, and very soon we're going to be switching from World Cup songs to Christmas songs. I still can't believe we're playing a World Cup at this time of year. But that is it for today. That's all we've got time for. Thanks to our special guest UCLan journalism graduate Richard Askham from BBC Northwest tonight.
And thanks also to our students Wardy, Cal and Jerry. This podcast was produced and presented by sports journalism students at the University of Central Lancashire in Preston. If you liked it, you can follow us on Spotify and YouTube and share it with all your friends.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow going through all of the action in today's matches, and of course looking forward to what's going to be an interesting weekend of football in Qatar.